Right now on Current News, Holy Week continues. Tonight, a special blessing. We have exclusive coverage.
In every diocese around the world, the Catholic community is coming together for an ancient tradition, one not even a pandemic can stop. I'm Jessica Easthope, and the Diocese of Brooklyn's CHRISM Mass is about to begin.
Plus, attacks on Asian American New Yorkers, the latest victim, a 65-year-old woman heading to church. And satanic graffiti on a parish in Wisconsin. The community scrambles to remove it ahead of Easter. Then in Minneapolis, business is boarding up, hoping for the best but expecting the worst. Worried the Derek Chauvin trial will give rise to unrest and destruction. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. It's a mass that happens all over the world in different languages and at different times. But the CHRISM Mass tradition is the same no matter where you are. Priests renew their vows and bless the sacramental oils. In the Diocese of Brooklyn, it's about to begin. Current News' Jessica Easthope is standing by outside the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. Jess.
Christine, it's a tradition not even a pandemic can stop. New York City was the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis last year, and Mass had to be postponed till June. But this year, we're back on track. Priests are beginning to arrive here at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, and at 7:30, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio will begin CHRISM Mass. Now, normally thousands of people attend Mass here for the CHRISM Mass, but we're expecting about 200 this year, which is a number that allows everyone to safely participate in the Mass. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio calls these three holy oils the lifeblood of the church. They have many uses, but this year, one played an extremely crucial role: the oil of the sick.
The oil of the sick, in a special way, has to do with the faithful who receive the sacrament anointing of the sick, but also the hospital chaplains and those who assist the sick, because they, that oil is used with them. So we want them present.
In the last year, the oil has been used to anoint thousands. In New York alone, 50,000 people have died from coronavirus. The oils are ancient, and they've been through pandemics before. Father John O'Connor, the director of liturgy for the Diocese of Brooklyn, says the CHRISM Mass and these rituals have stood the test of time.
As you know, the oils are from olive oil, and they've been used since Old Testament times at different occasions in the life of the people of God. It allows us to be thankful of all the blessings that God has given us in nature.
The other two oils, the oil of the catechumens and chrism, are used differently. Chrism is used in the sacraments and to consecrate altars and dedicate churches. The oil of the catechumens is used in baptism. Typically, thousands are at this Mass so they can bring the oils home to their parishes.
There will be less of the ceremonial processions and participation of the faithful, and even some of the clergy, because of health reasons, won't be joining us.
The Mass is a special time for priests. They renew their vows and hear a message from their bishop.
It's an opportunity for the bishop to speak on the priesthood, some aspect of the priesthood. So that's why it's such an important night.
And we're waiting to hear Bishop DiMarzio's message, as one priests look forward to all year. As for what that message is, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'll have a full report tomorrow. In Prospect Heights, Jessica Easthope, Current News. Christine?
Jessica, stay with me for a second. Let's take a look back at some of Bishop DiMarzio's messages in the past. Let's go back to 2017. He declared it a year for vocations, calling on his flock to bring others into the priesthood. In 2018, he reiterated Pope Francis's message to reach out to the marginalized. In 2019, he spoke about protecting minors in the midst of the church's sexual abuse struggles. And last year, during the height of the pandemic, the bishop asked priests to persevere through tough times and remember their commitment to Jesus.
Yeah, Christine, if you remember, last year's CHRISM Mass was postponed until June, and I was there, and it was like unlike anything the diocese had seen. The pandemic didn't seem like it was letting up, and social unrest was unprecedented throughout the country and the city. Bishop DiMarzio's message last year was one of love. Christine?
All right, thank you, Jessica. We'll check in with you again right before the Mass. And remember, all week, Net TV will have live coverage of Holy Week masses and services. Again, right after Currents News at 7:30, the CHRISM Mass will air here on Net TV. Jessica Easthope will have full coverage of the Mass on Wednesday. And don't forget this either. For more coverage of Holy Week events and to find services near you, head over to thetablet.org. Perhaps next year, churches will be packed for Holy Week. In a step towards normalcy, New Yorkers ages 30 and older are now eligible for the coronavirus vaccine.
We believe in the freedom to vaccinate, but we need the supply. That is always going to be the message. We're hopeful in April the supply numbers are going to really go up, and that's going to be fantastic.
Mayor Bill de Blasio is closing in on his goal of vaccinating 5 million New Yorkers by June. The city says it has administered close to 4 million vaccine doses in total. The new eligibility puts New York onto an elite list. The state will soon join more than a dozen others that have opened vaccinations to all adults. Alaska was the first state to eliminate vaccine eligibility requirements for adults at the beginning of March. Arizona followed last week. This past Monday, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Ohio, North Dakota, and Kansas lifted their requirements. On Tuesday, Minnesota opened the shots to people 16 and over. On Wednesday, Indiana and South Carolina will open up. Then Connecticut and Montana will follow them on Thursday. And rounding out the week, New Hampshire and Colorado on Friday. New York will open up vaccines to people 16 and older next Tuesday on April 6th. And that's not the only group of people that can get the shot in the arm. New York State is being ordered to open vaccine eligibility to all prison and jail inmates. A judge ruled excluding them is unfair and unjust. The ruling stems from a lawsuit brought against the state by 2 Rikers Island inmates. About 50,000 people are currently in correctional facilities across New York. Of that, 1,100 contracted COVID-19 just last month, with 5 of them dying. Experts said inmates should be prioritized because of their higher risk of contracting the disease. In the midst of all these vaccination efforts, President Joe Biden is pushing governors and mayors to reinstate mask mandates. The president's plea comes after the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned of another surge, a potential 4th wave, and its, quote, impending doom. Cases across the U.S. have started to rise again by 12%. According to a report from the New York Times, the country is averaging more than 63,000 new cases a day. In the meantime, Republicans are speaking out against Biden's planned vaccine passports. The White House is working on an initiative to help businesses identify people who are vaccinated. Some GOP lawmakers are calling the so-called passports invasive and hypocritical. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise says if the White House wants to use the passports, then they have 0 grounds to oppose Republican calls for voter ID cards. Passports or not, the CDC is releasing their findings on the efficacy of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, and they say things are working pretty well in the real world. A clinical trial included 4,000 healthcare workers and first responders. The results find the pair of shots prevent 90% of infections 2 weeks after the second dose, and a single dose prevents 80% of infections 2 weeks after vaccination. The World Health Organization has a new report out, one the world has been waiting for since the coronavirus first came on our radar. It's 400 pages and attempts to answer the big question: how did COVID-19 start?
All hypotheses are on the table and warrant complete and further studies.
The report draws no absolute conclusions, and leaders say they are still investigating every angle. The global agency does admit, however, the pandemic likely started from a bat that infected an animal at a wildlife farm. The animals were likely sold in a market in Wuhan. Rumors about the origin of the virus have fostered an increase in hate against Asian Americans. In New York, the NYPD is investigating 2 more attacks, both happening in just the last 24 hours. As a warning, these videos and incidents may disturb you. In one case, an Asian man was brutally beaten on a subway train until he lost consciousness. The other was caught on surveillance cameras, showing a 65-year-old Asian woman punched and kicked while she was on her way to church. She fell to the ground as the suspect made anti-Asian statements, hitting her more until he ran away. Police are releasing this video of the suspect walking along the sidewalk. The woman was taken to the hospital with swelling on her face and pain in her leg. The latest attacks represent a startling trend of violence against Asian Americans. In 2019, the NYPD recorded 3 anti-Asian hate crimes. In 2020, that number spiked to 28, including a new category for attacks motivated by the coronavirus. That number spiking again in 2021, with 33 reported so far this year. Day 2 of testimony in the Derek Chauvin murder trial is underway, with the continued questioning of a professional mixed martial arts fighter who stumbled upon the last moments of George Floyd's life. Camila Bernal is in Minneapolis with the latest.
I believe I witnessed a murder, and I felt the need to call the police.
That's what Tuesday's first witness, Donald Williams, a professional mixed martial arts fighter, said in court when asked why he called 911 after witnessing the last moments between former officer Derek Chauvin and George Floyd last May. Then a tense back and forth during the defense's cross-examination, attorney Eric Nelson repeatedly asking Williams if he became angry on scene.
You called him bogus.
I did.
You called him a bum at least 13 times.
That's what you counted in the video?
That's what I counted.
And that's what you got, 13. I was arrested.
Williams, who also works security, insisted he was controlled and professional the entire time. The next witness, a minor at the time, who did not testify on camera and was identified as DF in court documents, told the jury why she decided to pull out her phone and record what was happening outside Cup Foods.
It wasn't right. He was suffering. He was in pain.
She ended by telling the jury she still wishes she had done more to stop Chauvin.
It's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
In Minneapolis, Camila Bernal, Currents News.
Just a few miles away from the courthouse, uncertainty is keeping Minneapolis business owners awake at night, many worrying about the outcome of the trial, what it would mean for the community, and what it would mean for them. All this as the unrest following George Floyd's death last May remains fresh in their minds. Heather Warfield works at Wendy's House of Soul in North Minneapolis, and she fears the restaurant won't survive.
Our entire block was fine. Each block to the side of us and in front of us was horrible. To watch, our neighbors go through this, and some of them have not been able to, come back from it. To see these people that have had businesses 20, 30 years and they can't come back now. So it's tough.
In an effort to help Minneapolis business owners prepare for the outcome of the trial, city leaders are encouraging them to work together, seek additional private security, and make sure their insurance policies are up to date. Over in Wisconsin, a Catholic church in Milwaukee was vandalized, defaced with satanic graffiti during Holy Week. Demons control me. The number 666 and the letters CYKO reading psycho were painted on the parish center. The priest says he saw at least 2 people committing the crime, but there's no video evidence. The church's cameras were covered with dust from previous construction and did not capture any of the suspects. Despite everything, the priest is still preaching a message of forgiveness.
This is just a small reminder of how even our physical structures, can be damaged and hurt as well. Nothing near like what Jesus went through, but in some ways, there's a strong comparison there that kind of gives greater meaning to the celebrations we have during this Holy Week.
Father Mike says it will cost thousands of dollars to clean off the graffiti. There's a lot more news headed your way. A homecoming for Mother Mary. A statue was returned to a church in Iraq years after it was destroyed by the Islamic State. And meet a laywoman on a mission. She's helping to run her parish.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
As we continue to celebrate Women's History Month, tonight we'd like to introduce you to a laywoman who's keeping a church in Albany in tip-top shape. Elizabeth Simcoe was appointed by her bishop to run St. Vincent de Paul Parish rather than a deacon or priest. Currents News' Emily Drooby has the story.
switching out decor.
The pictures are really beautiful.
Coordinating church events, washing and folding rags. Elizabeth SIMCOE does it all. She's a laywoman, but she's taken on a job usually reserved for the clergy, leading this Catholic church up in Albany, New York. It's part of canon law.
The Code of Canon Law allows for the bishop to appoint a deacon or a layperson if there aren't enough priests to pastor the parishes.
The world has been dealing with a priest shortage. Recently, Vatican data showing the number of priests has dropped, with only one for every 3,000 Catholics. That's where people like Elizabeth come in. Her job title is Parish Life Director. Basically, well, there's a canonical pastor for council and rotating priests to celebrate Mass. Elizabeth runs the show, both a spiritual and administrative leader.
So you need to be able to manage parish finances, you need to manage personnel issues, you need to manage crises, or you need to be with people in crises.
And this church isn't just run by a woman, it's run by many women.
Actually, all of our staff, with the exception of our custodial staff and the priests who celebrate Mass with us, are women.
The strong role of women here in Albany, part of a growing trend within the church. Earlier this year, Pope Francis appointing 2 women to high-ranking Vatican posts previously only held by men. For Elizabeth, it wasn't just about being a trailblazer, it was about stepping in where she was needed.
There are many, many examples of women who have stepped forward to lead, not because they want to be powerful, but because they saw a need that had to be met.
And being there for her faith.
Why is your faith important to you?
Oh, it's why I get up every morning.
In Albany, New York, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Tomorrow, we will wrap up Women's History Month with a special report on the growing problem of gender inequality and violence made worse by the ongoing pandemic. We'll talk with renowned humanitarian photographer Lisa Christine. Her work documenting the status of women and girls around the world has been championed by Pope Francis.
When I learned that Pope Francis was going to launch the exhibition and bless it, I was really moved. And I'll never forget him holding his cross. He would pick it up and sort of press it toward his heart, sort of showing us the pain of the situation and saying thank you for, making this body of work.
We'll have more on the status of women and Lisa Christine's haunting images Wednesday on Currents News. A Marian statue desecrated by ISIS militants is now back in its parish. The statue was near Pope Francis during his Mass in Erbil, Iraq, and was blessed during the Mass. The head and hands had been cut off, but the head was later recovered and restored. The statue is now back at St. Adai Church in the Nineveh Plains. In Bangladesh, hundreds of Rohingya refugees are still missing after massive fires tore through their settlement. Families are looking for loved ones as potential solutions to this crisis are being discussed. Rohingya refugees are trying to resume their normal activities following the wave of fires that caused chaos in this camp. There were 3 fires in only 4 days. The last one left 15 people dead and 300 missing. It destroyed the shelters of 50,000 people.
Families were separated. Some children are still looking for their parents. This is a very, very difficult situation.
In the Cox region of Bangladesh, there are more than 800,000 Rohingya. Most of them arrived in 2017 in an effort to escape repression under the government of Myanmar. They live in inhumane conditions. They're crowded in one of the world's largest refugee camps, and the government of Bangladesh is struggling to address this migration crisis. In fact, they are looking into a possible solution, moving 100,000 refugees to an island with enough space, but with terrible climate conditions. Pope Francis has been following the situation closely, even visiting in 2017. In his latest book, Let Us Dream, Pope Francis called the Rohingya the most persecuted people on earth. Still to come on Currents News, one of the world's most famous museums, the Louvre. You can't get there, but it's coming to you. And what's the Easter season without colored eggs? We'll tell you how students are making the practice more about Christ. Want to visit the Louvre without heading to Paris? Now you can. The world-famous museum has put its entire collection online. Close to 500,000 pieces right there at your fingertips, including some previously unavailable to the Louvre's visitors, such as works on long-term loans abroad or those not currently on display. And don't think of it as just a one-time visit. We're told the new virtual experience will continue to evolve, so you can visit the Louvre from the comfort of your own home again and again. And finally tonight, we look at another work of art and a common Easter tradition, coloring eggs. A Catholic college in North Dakota is taking a Christian look at the secular practice by teaching a course revolved around Slavic Easter egg coloring and how it relates back to Christ's Passion.
The students are working in a traditional folk art that's ancient. It's been around for centuries. But essentially, it's where the Easter egg comes from. The Easter egg comes from pagan times, but when the Christians came into these areas of Eastern Europe, the idea was to let's Christianize some of these things. And the Easter egg was one of those things that could easily be Christianized because the egg kind of represented the tomb of the life that is within inside it. I also like to think about it when I do it. When we start this process, we start with a completely white egg. And as we begin kind of moving through the process, that egg becomes darker and darker and darker. And I kind of think of it and connect it with the idea that when we are baptized, we are fresh, we're clean, we're completely free of sin. But as our life moves on, we go through things that are hard. We fall into sin. We have things that scar us in our life. And it's like the wax that then goes on the eggs, and then as we age, it's like the dye that goes through. And at the end, when we are completely dark, the idea is to empty ourselves, and so we actually empty all of our eggs. And we take the empty egg that is all completely black now and take it to the candle, which represents the light of Christ. And when we empty ourselves and we bring ourselves to Christ and we wipe away the sin, we wipe away the darkness, we are created anew. But we're not those elements that we thought in our lives were difficult to go through. They end up showcasing all the colors and the glory of those moments. So for me, it reminds me that in our struggles and our darkness and things like that, that's where God's glory is going to be shown.
This is the second year that the University of Mary has offered the Easter course. Its instructor hopes the class will become a regular part of the spring semester. Before we go, let's check back in with Jessica Easthope. She's standing by at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, where the CHRISM Mass is about to begin. Jess, what's going on now?
Christine, priests are starting to arrive to this important Mass. They actually just closed Pacific Street behind me so people could park nearby. And again, typically about 1,000 people attend this Mass every year. Bishop DiMarzio actually told me that for the last 15 years, the Diocese of Brooklyn has actually moved the date of this Mass to today instead of Holy Thursday to have more people attend. But there'll be about 200 people here tonight, which is a great number because the Co-Cathedral can hold 400 people while still maintaining social distancing and safe practices during the pandemic. And I just went in just a short while ago and saw the canisters of oil being set up and everything looks good to go. Again, these priests are expecting a really powerful message from Bishop DiMarzio tonight. Christine?
All right, Jess, and we look forward to your report tomorrow. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Stay with us. The CHRISM Mass is about to begin right here on Net TV.